Welcome back. And on this video, we will discuss the continuation of our philosophical self. Today, we will discuss the Western philosophy of self. And I do hope you'll find it interesting and very endearing to know the Western perspective. Kasi they have contributed a lot also in making ourselves or in understanding ourselves through their perspective. And simulan na natin. So, mas marami tayong mapag-uusapan. And remember, all the lectures that you will watch on our videos, on our asynchronous videos, continuation and mas elaborative explanation siya pag nag-synchronous class tayo. So I hope you're looking forward every time we'll be having our synchronous classes. Sige po, let's start! Here, sa Western philosophy. The Western philosophies of self encompasses all views of the self that emanated from the European and American continent. It is postulated by thinkers from these regions. And the way that Western philosophy is being discussed by these philosophers are far from what we have learned from Eastern philosophy. Although, again, Eastern philosophy is very close to our heart because we're Asians and mas malapit sa katotohanan when we heard of the philosophies or when we spoke about Eastern philosophy, it is quite relatable because, again, we're Asian and we belong to the Eastern region. But yung contributions of the Western philosophy is also very important for us to realize the existence of ourselves. And it is more of individualistic kasi and rational yung pagbibigay nila ng explanation when we want to really learn more about ourselves. And if we would want to know kung paano nagsimula yung self. So, yun yung mga explanations, itong mga great philosophers na ipapresent ko sa inyo today. Hindi ko man ma-present lahat if you search if you search Google in other forms or in the books, but based on the reference that we have, these are the great philosophers that you need to know that contributed to the understanding the self. First natin ay si Socrates. Si Socrates is the first moral philosopher. And I know very famous siya sa maraming contributions niya when we speak of philosophy and different disciplines na may kinalaman ng philosophy. Socrates believes that to understand the self is to know thyself, quote unquote. So to know thyself and the particular characteristics of the self determine its identity. So, yun, what composes one's identity is definitely based on the character one person or that person has. And this assertion is actually imperative in the form, and it indicates that man must stand and live accordingly to his nature. So, sorry po. So, ang tao po, para mas matutunan niya or makilala niya ang kanyang sarili, kailangan nito na makita ang kanyang sarili. So, sa paanong paraan? Ano yung gustong ipahiwatig ni Socrates noong mga panahon na yon para mabuo itong identity na tinatawag? So, man has to look at himself. How will that man or how will that person look onto himself? So since si Socrates is a great student of Plato, and pareho sila na may ganitong klaseng pag-iisip when dualistic nga ang composition ng isang tao, which is the body and soul. But for Socrates, he believes in this what we call dialogue. Dialogue is the communication of yourself to yourself. And yung literal na ibig sabihin nga ng dialogue, no? Communication. And that's within ng sarili mo sa sarili mo. Paano nasasagawa ito? This is done through self-reflection. And isa sa kilala si Socrates is itong naiambag niya what we call Socratic method. Socratic method through the dialogue between soul and itself or between a student and his teacher. And this Socratic method daw is without this work on one's life, it is worthless, according to Socrates. Quote unquote, an unexamined life is not worth living. So, dahil dito sa Socratic method na to, what is Socratic method? It is trying to know something by means of asking questions. Parang nakakalito po yun, ma'am. Paano mo malalaman kung tanong pa rin ang sagot mo? Yan yung mga concept ng Socratic method eh. And yung way for us to ask questions in order for us to find answers, madalas to na ginagawa ng mga teachers. If you know, some of your teachers actually follow this kind of method. The way they teach, they ask a lot of questions. And the answers is not given by your teachers. It is still given by the students. So how? Kasi po through the questions being asked, one will be able to find answers on his own by means of reflection. So yung dialogue na tinatawag nga dito ni Socrates is for yourself to communicate to your inner self, to your soul. And dahil sa patuloy mo na pag-gather ng answer sa pagtatanong mo, nagkakaroon ng ability yung self na hanapin or hukayin yung mga dapat na answers na hindi niya kinakailangan ng ibang tao para magsabi sa kanya kung ano ang sagot. But because of his effort, his own effort to answer his own questions or the questions around that person, nagkakaroon siya or sa paligid, mga questions mo sa paligid mo, nagkakaroon ka ng dialogue sa sarili mo. Hindi lang to literal na kinakausap natin yung sarili natin, pero very, very close siya sa ganong sitwasyon. Meron tayong mga pagkakataon sa buhay na dahil sa gulong-gulo yung isip natin, no? Meron tayong mga questions. And yung questions na yun, sinasagot natin on our own. Ayaw natin na i-expose yung ibang part ng buhay natin or may mga questions tayo na ayaw nating itanong talaga sa iba kasi may either nahihiya, natatakot, or personal reasons na meron ka. But because nga itong dialogue na tinatanong or nakikipag-communicate ka sa sarili mo, nabibigyan mo ng sagot yung sarili mo. And that is also what we call reflection. Nagli-lead siya sa self-reflection. And yun yung isa na gustong ipaintindi sa atin ni Socrates na para ma-attain mo yung identity na gusto mo, kailangan patuloy kang nakikipag-usap sa sarili mo. And although dualistic yung paniniwala din ni Socrates, yung my body and my soul, but an unexamined life is not worth living. Ibig sabihin, if hindi mo pag hindi ka nagse-self-reflect, walang worth yung buhay mo. if ikaw sa sarili mo hindi ka gumagawa ng effort for you to examine your own life, your own personality, your own characteristics, because through that you will develop eventually your identity and whatever it is na gusto mong magkaroon ka sa sarili mo. So, if that is the case na hindi ka nagre-reflect, hindi mo nagbibigay ng effort, conscious effort for you to examine yourself, it's not worth living. Yung buhay na meron ka, maybe it's just a mere fantasy. Kasi yung realizations na yun, yung mga reflections na yun, it will lead you to realization what is real with with your life, with you, yung sarili mo. And uh, um, another favorite quote of mine, that is based on understanding the self, is that one thing only I know is that I know nothing. Hindi lang siya sa concept ng understanding the self, but a lot of philosophies actually ginagamit to. One thing only I know is that I know nothing. First time I heard this, it's so humble. Parang humility if a person think of this way. And that is, again, another contribution of Socrates. One thing only I know is that I know nothing. Kasi nga naniniwala si Socrates na through questions and through you trying to find answers to your question, na it means na hindi mo alam lahat. Or possibly hindi mo alam at all. And hindi masamang bagay ang magtanong. Sa pagtatanong kasi, dito natututunan ng isang tao kung paano niya gagamitin yung mga natutunan niya, mga observations and experiences niya para malaman niya kung ano yung sarili niyang sagot sa katanungan. But yung paniniwala ni Socrates na alam niya na ang natatanging hindi niya alam, or ang alam niya ay hindi niya alam ang lahat, or hindi niya alam. It's so confusing, but that's what it makes it a philosophy, no? And what it really makes it more interesting is because mapapaisip ka talaga. So dahil nga marinig mo lang dahil napapaisip ka na, then it means na you don't know everything. You still you still know nothing. And because you still have yet to find answers, and you continuously try to ask questions, the more questions actually, the more you would want to find answers, the more you would want to know yourself better, the more you want to improve yourself better. And that what makes it very, very helpful for us to use the Socratic method. So, may ikukwento pa rin ako sa synchronous natin about Socratic method. Sige po. Moving on, we have Aristotle. Aristotle is the father of Western philosophy. And for Aristotle, the self is made up now of the soul, which is the core essence of a living being, which is not separated from the body, but the soul is the one that acts within the body. So, dualistic din si Aristotle, meaning he believes na mayroong body and soul. But yung again, yung soul is not religiously speaking, wala siyang kinalaman sa religion or faith, but when we speak of the soul here, ito yung kinocompose daw, yung ito yung nagpapatakbo sa body natin. Okay. So, meron daw siyang three kinds of soul or psyche. Yun yung term, yung soul is what it pertains to be the psyche. Okay? Yung first is the vegetative soul. It can grow and nourish itself. Like a plant, kailangan na ano bang kailangan ng plant? Diba? Kailangan niya ng soil, ng sunlight, ng water in order for it to grow. And sa vegetative soul, sinasabi dito na in order for in order for that vegetative soul to to develop, no, kailangan niya na mag-grow and ma-nourish yung sarili niya. And it is achievable for the vegetative soul is again through the experience. Yung sarili niyang way kung paano siya mag-grow and magde-develop. Yung mga learnings and all that. So, yun yung vegetative soul. O, yung tinatawag naman natin na sensitive soul, it can experience sensations and move locally. So, ito naman yung mga nakakaramdam within ourselves. The the fact na nakaka-experience tayong sensations sa body natin, na nafe-feel natin na because of loving someone, natututunan natin na yung more of the emotional part of ourselves. So because kapag kinikilig tayo, really just that part of sa sarili natin, but within ourselves, na nalalaman natin itong experience na nangyayari sa body natin ay may kinalaman din siya sa pag-develop ng sarili natin. So, hindi lang siya basta-basta using our senses, but meron siyang kinalaman kung paano tayo nagpo-progress or nagde-develop as a person. And then, lastly, we have the rational soul. Itong rational soul na to, medyo unique part na to ng tao or ng pagkatao. Kasi itong part na to, its ability is to receive forms of other things and compare them using the nous or the intellect and the logos reason by Zalta 2016. So itong rational soul, from the term rational, di ba, we are a rational being. So yung rational soul, it makes us more of being an intellect individual. Us na pinapagana natin yung reasoning and conceptualizing something. Pag pinapagana na natin yung more of the mind ng natin, so nagkakaroon ng mas malalim na pag-iisip. And dahil nga tayo ang may kakayahan na maging rational being in comparison to other animals, so bakit? Bakit tayo tinatawag na rational being? Ano yung kakayahan kapag ikaw ay isang rational being compared to an animal? And then, for Aristotle, the soul is the form of living being. And because all beings are composites of form and matter, the form of living beings is that which endows them with what is specific to living beings. So, naniniwala nga, di ba, na meron tayong form. So, may body tayo. But yung form natin, para mag-operate siya, para gumana siya, kailangan ng soul. And dahil nga sa soul na to, kailangan to ng isang tao to fully live his life. That is for Aristotle. Bigyan pala natin ng paninindigan yung I would want to share that example by during our synchronous class, so we can discuss further and make you understand of what Aristotle would really want us to understand, of understanding the self. Ang daming understand na. Para sa konsepto nga ni Aristotle, bakit siya iba kay Socrates. Next is that for next philosopher natin, we'll proceed to René Descartes. And kay René Descartes, to him, the self is a thinking person. So, may isip, yung mind, naging specific na si René Descartes. No, may utak ang tao. So, since may utak ang tao, separate siya sa body and sa soul na tinatawag. Because yung hindi, dualistic din si Rene Descartes, but because yung body and soul na yon, and part ng body is having a mind, and because we have the capability to think, mas marami tayong magagawa para makilala yung sarili. And in his writing, which is the cogito ergo sum, ang ibig sabihin niya in English, I think, therefore I am. And he stressed that the mind is a substance within the brain capable of thinking, affirming, doubting, judging, etc. The self then is regarded as one that makes us aware to perceive the external world. According to Rene Descartes, he also emphasized the notion of self, which is made of consciousness that forms our thinking and guides our behavior. It is the self that perceives the world. Napakaganda. Kung talagang you will read between the lines of what he would want us to, what Rene Descartes would want to impart. I think, therefore I am. If a person thinks that he's stupid, hindi malayo, iisipin niya stupid talaga siya. If a person feels or thinks that he is guwapo or handsome, then hindi malayo. Yun ang makikita niya. Yeah, because whatever, that's the power of the mind. For Rene Descartes, he contributed that what you think of yourself, that defines you, who you are. And Rene Descartes helped us to understand the presence of the mind is one of the powerful, or is the most powerful part of a human being that is capable of thinking, of course, and other things na kaya nitong gawin. And part nun is for you to have consciousness of who you are as a person, the way you behave, the way you act, the way you perceive the world. It's all in the mind. Palawakin pa natin tong discussion na to sa synchronous. Next is David Hume. So, si David Hume is a Scottish empiricist. So, dahil nga sa empiricist si David Hume, pag empiricist ka kasi, you are less likely to believe that can be seen, you parang less likely you believe that it should be seen. In order for you to understand, in order for you to believe, you have to see it. It has to do something with your senses. No? Kaya parang sa research, di ba? Pag sinasabi nga natin research, it's an empirical study. Kasi hindi ka maniniwala unless you see it, unless you prove it. So, ganun yung thinking ni David Hume, given na he is a Scottish empiricist. So, sa kanya, the self is nothing more than the mental perception which are available in our memory. Isa pang maganda, no? Yung nagko-compose daw sa self is kung ano yung mga perceptions yung perceptions mo with the use of your memory. And this perception relies on our previous experiences that give meaning based on the principles of cause and effect. Kaya ka nagkakaroon ng perception ay dahil sa experiences mo in life. May it be direct experience or maybe indirect experience, narinig mo, nakita mo, but it has something to do na experience. We view things as distinct, but they are connected together by resemblance, contiguity, or caution. So even though na may mga unique tayo na experiences sa buhay, but still it's interconnected daw. It's connected to other experiences. Paano yun? Ako, isang magandang topic din kung gusto natin palawakin sa synchronous. And all perceptions of the mind is divided into distinct kinds. We have what we call the impressions and the ideas. Yan, napakaganda din ito. So, ang impressions are the original form of all our ideas. Impression. So, ito yung mga bagay na pag sinabi kasi natin na impression, ibig sabihin kung ano yung naisip mo tungkol sa ano yung impression mo, ano yung naisip mo lang na based siguro sa mga indirect mo nga na naririnig sa ibang tao, na mapanood mo, pero hindi mo siya na-experience. So, it's still just impressions. Kung ano yung nasa isip mo, pero nasa isip mo pa lang siya dahil wala ka pang experience sa kanya. And you said that mind is simple and abundant of perceptions and experiences linked by the relations of cautions and resemblance. So, ito naman ngayong ideas. Kaya sinabi na ideas kasi it it has been done, or you already have experienced this thing or feeling. And because of that experience, you already have an idea. And dahil sa idea na yun, either nape-prevent or napupush ka into doing that same thing again, or preventing to do that something again. So if hindi mo pa siya na-experience, mananatili siyang impression. Because you haven't directly experienced that certain type of something. So it leads you, if you experience it, then it's already an idea. And dahil sa mga ideas na yon, nandun lang siya sa back of your mind. And dahil dito sa lahat ng impressions na meron ka, it again allows you to create yourself. But because of the ideas, this impression and ideas you have, now nagkakaroon ka na ng konsepto of yourself. And ito yung bundle theory. So yung bundle theory na tinatawag of the personal identity, Hume said again, it's because of itong bonded perceptions and experiences linked by the relations of cautions and resemblance. And para nga sa kanya, itong impressions ay bumubuo sa self, and as well as the experiences, which is it becomes ideas na. And it's, yung impression kasi vivid products of the direct experience. So, parang hindi pa siya ganun ka-concrete. But when we speak of the ideas, it's already a copy of of an impression. So, ibig sabihin, na-experience mo na yung impression mo. Kaya siya naging idea na. At dahil dito, example natin yung feeling ng happiness. If you're happy, every time na makakakuha ka, for example, happy ka because, for example, when you were a child, happy ka kapag good boy ka or good girl ka kasi binibigyan ka ng praise ni mommy or ni daddy, or binibili nila yung gusto mo, o kapag mabait ka nga, bibigyan ka nilang lollipop, may certain reward siguro na naiisip ka. Or sinasabi mo na, sige, next sa synchronous classes na natin, ibibigay yung pang example. But let's take into you being a child. So kapag good boy ka, good girl, hindi ka sumusumpong, hindi ka umiiyak dahil sa walang bagay, nung medyo bata-bata ka pa, na si mommy and si daddy mo may ibinibigay sa'yo in return of you being a good boy or good girl. And you're very, very happy because of whatever you're doing. So, dahil sa ideas na yon, ang tao, dahil nga natuto sila from the experience, so, ang tendency, habang lumalaki sila, tinatry nilang maging good boy or good girl. Hindi dahil para bigyan sila ng candy ng nanay at tatay nila or re-rewardan sila because of that good thing na ginagawa nila. But it's because nga na yung idea na yon, it led them of knowing na kapag mabuti ka or gumawa ka ng mabuti or just the mere na behave ka, meron meron mangyayaring happiness or may ma-attain kang ganun certain na feeling. So, patuloy mo siyang gagawin. Kabaliktaran naman, kapag meron ka namang ginawang masama, tapos may gusto ka talagang mangyaring hindi maganda na nararamdaman ng ibang tao, tapos pati ang ending, gusto mo naman, gusto mo yung experience. Erase natin. Sige, medyo wag naman yung ganong extent. But in the sense na, for example, na tumatakbo ka. Dahil tumatakbo ka ng mabilis, you're careless when you were a child, tapos yung experience mo yun, nadapa ka, nasugatan ka, no? Natahi yung sugat mo kasi malalim. So, painful experience naman siya. Dahil sa painful experience na yon, naging isa painful idea na yon, na pag tumakbo ka ng mabilis, tapos you're very careless, mapapahama ka. Then therefore, hindi mo na siya gagawin ulit. Kasi you already have an idea because of the experience that you've had. So since you have that idea, you want to prevent that idea to happen again. So mas careful ka na. So yun yung nagagawa ng impression and idea. Next is what we call, next is John Locke. John Locke is an English empirical philosopher. And John Locke's contribution is that he contributed that the self can be understood now by examining one's mind. What constitutes the mind? And Locke stressed that minds consist of memory, where our consciousness or our thoughts and experiences resides. Ayan na, very specific na. The more na nagiging specific na yung mga contributions nila, ito daw yung memory na tinatawag. So, itong memory na sinasabi, it is the collection of the thoughts and experiences. Malapit siya sa impression and idea ni David Hume, but still different perspective. And for Locke, it suggests that the self, which is the consciousness, is a thinking, intelligent being that has reason and reflection. And it continues to define one's personal identity. So, it is also the self can be equated with one personal identity. So, this consciousness determines oneself that continues to grow and develop through tough times that form our personal identity. Memory, therefore, is a necessary condition of personal identity. Yan. So, pagdating naman natin kay John Locke, narinig yun na tong tabula rasa. Na it's a clean slate, tabula rasa. Gusto ko sanang itanong sa inyo kung ano yung tinatawag na tabula rasa. Sige, yun na lang yung discuss natin for the synchronous class. I want you to try to know what tabula rasa means. And ano yung relation niya when we speak of John Locke. When we speak of John Locke nga kasi, para kay John Locke, ang self daw is like a tabula rasa when we were born. So, yan, connect natin siya. And because of the collective experiences, again, because meron nga tayong collective experiences, di ba? So, ang mahalaga dito, yung experiences natin, it completes us. It completes the consciousness. And because of those experiences that completes our consciousness, nagkakaroon tayo ng memory or ability para ma-hone yung sarili natin, para mapabuti or makaiwas sa kung ano man yung mga part ng memory na yon. And yung memory na yon, nagbibigay din siya ng daan para sa atin na ma-improve and ma-develop pa yung sarili natin because of this consciousness. So, ito conscious nga tayo eh. And dahil nga sa conscious tayo, tinatry natin na mas mapaigi or mapabuti pa yung self natin. So, for example, yung experiences mo nung child ka, bakit carry over mo siya nung adolescent ka na, and then nung young adult ka, tapos carry over mo pa siya nung old age ka na. Or nung after mo ng young adult ka na, tapos old age mo. So, dahil nga sa mga memories na nagkakaroon ka, that collective experiences of yours, it makes you try to improve, or because of the experiences you've had, the memories that you've had, patuloy mong ginagawa yung mga bagay na nagpakapagpasaya sa'yo, or may mga positive na feelings kang nakukuha. But piniprevent mo naman yung mga hurtful na pangyayari. And minsan nagkukos yung mga fears na yon because of those experiences. And dun na nagkakaroon ng sense of identity. That personal identity that we're speaking. So, elaborate na lang natin siya once na we have the synchronous class. We proceed to Sigmund Freud. For Sigmund Freud, and si Sigmund Freud kasi, well, ako po ay kilala ko siya. It's because again of my background with psychology. And for Sigmund Freud, who is the father of psychoanalysis, he believes that the self has three layers. Three layers, which is called the id, ego, and superego. So, for Sigmund Freud, na alam niyo naman na that yung psychology, which is very, very known also si Sigmund Freud, per Freud's single most enduring and important idea was that human yung psyche na tinatawag, which is the personality, has more than one aspect. Ano yung bumubuo sa isang tao? Itong tatlo down na ito para kay Sigmund Freud. And that is through the personality theory. Again, in psychology. The id, ego, and superego, all developing at different stages in our lives. But it starts even when we are children. When we were a child, nade-develop na tong id, ego, and superego na to. Ay, nako, kung medyo mga specific na to, pa-lead na tayo sa psychology, pero hindi ko na siya specify at marami siya. But to give you a glimpse of what are those, these are systems, not parts of the brain, or in any way physical, instinctual part of the mind that contains sexual aggressive drives and hidden memories, which is also the superego operates as moral conscience, and the ego is the realistic part that mediates. Okay po. So, pagdating dito, ang id po kasi for, yan, ang id po kasi, it works as the pleasure principle. So when we speak of pleasure principle, it is the seat of our passion, desires, and other instinctual drives, like our bodily needs and want and impulses. So dahil nga sa id down na ito yung nagpupush sa isang tao to achieve or to attain the pleasurable feeling. Kung bakit ang tao naghahangad na maranasan yung happiness or yung pleasure na na-attain sa isang bagay. And dahil sa mga drive na to, it makes us do things even na it is not allowed. Yeah, ito yung mga, kaya nga siya impulses. Very, very interesting tong topic na to, but we'll try to give more sa synchronous class natin. And mas maintindihan nyo pa siya. Basta tandaan nyo, id is for pleasure principle. Kasi si id po, siya yung nagbubulong sa isang tao daw. Since again, hindi to part ng mind, but basta internally, meron tayong part sa sarili natin na to. And yun yung id. Pagdating naman natin sa ego, It seeks to please the id drives in realistic way. And it also the ego regulates our action. So dahil nga si ego yung parang middleman, siya yung nagtatry na maging gitna lang, ma-regulate yung mga behavior and magkaroon ng maging intact or in touch pa rin sa reality despite all of it na nangyayari, despite the drive ng it, which is to seek pleasure. But si ego, siya yung nag-neutralize sa dalawa na powerful, powerful part of the self. And for example, ay hindi, yung ang id natin is for us to seek pleasure if we are hungry. Tandaan. So dahil nga, pag gutom ka, syempre para masatisfy mo yung sarili mo, kailangan mo kumain. Kaso, paano ka kakain? Pag, kunyari sa synchronous class, syempre bawal kumain habang nagsisynchronous class. Part na siya ng policy natin. At dahil bawal kumain sa synchronous class, if id lang ang pag-uusapan, kakain ka pa rin. Kahit na naka-open cam ka pa, kakain ka pa rin. But because of ego, nagkakaroon ka ng touch sa reality na kapag kumain ka, nade-distinguish mo kasi yung law, yung presence ng law, policy and all, dahil nga sa ego, sa realistic principle. And dahil doon, hindi ka ma-urge na gawin yung isang bagay kasi nga alam mo kung ano yung reality, ano yung mangyayari sa'yo. O may consequence, di ba? May pwede rin na punishment or reward. But dahil nga sa ego na to, nare-regulate yung action. So, hindi ka muna kakain unless tapos na ang klase. That's the way it is. And we then go to superego. For the superego, it works as the morality principle. So this morality principle is the seat of what is right or wrong. And as it reflects the internalization of culture rules set by the guidance and influence of our parents. Kindly hold on. So, the superego na. Ang superego nga, dahil nga, alam naman natin, based on the representation sa picture na nakikita ninyo, the id, and then we have the superego. So, ang superego morality principle, siya naman po yung bumubulong kung ano yung mga kabaliktaran. Actually, kabaliktaran siya ng pleasure or which is the id. Kasi ito yung pwede natin sabihin na konsensya, yung conscience. And dahil sa morality principle siya yung nagpupush naman sa self ng isang tao na wag gawin ng mga bagay na hindi tama. Kaya nga siya morality principle. And dahil sa, for example, si ego, nagkakaroon siya ng dilemma kasi pagod ka and you want to sleep. But then again, yung konsensya mo, tinatawag or inuusig ka rin kasi kailangan mo pa rin mag-aral. May synchronous class kayo ngayon. So, anong gagawin mo? Si being the middle person or being the middle self, which is the ego, so siya ngayon yung magbabalanse. Try niya ngayon kung ano yung mas mangingibabaw. Kasi both are actually powerful. But among the three of them, hindi si ego ang most powerful. It is actually the id. Because id is what makes a person really drive no, according to what he wants. It's a manner of how he really one person really wants it. But it the id is the most powerful among the three. So tingnan natin kung bakit sa discussion natin. So the three layers of self interact with each other. The ego meditate between the id and superego. Mediate. Actually, that's not meditate. That's mediate between the id and superego. And whichever dominates from the two structures, the ego will act in reality. This is how our self determines our personality. And so from the three na principles na to, or three layers of the self, kung tawagin natin, meron talagang nagdo-dominate. Meron at meron matatalo. At meron na masusunod. Because of these layers of the self, it now can determine yung personality ng isang tao. So if ikaw yung tao na mataas ang pleasure principle mo, you're very impulsive, tapos you tend to do things without even thinking kasi gusto mo i-satisfy na kaagad si id. So, you couldn't care less. You just will go with the whatever you want, with your desire. Kaya, ano ang tendency kapag mataas ang id? Sino-sino yung mga tao sa lipunan ang mataas ang id? Yan, actually, pwede ko naman sabihin, but I want you to think hard about this. Ba't naman ang mga tao na mataas ang superego? Sa lipunan natin, sa community, sa environment, sino naman po ang may mataas na superego? Sino sila sa lipunan? Hindi specific na names, but yung people sa ating community. Yeah, please share us your thoughts or your answers next meeting. Last but not the least, I will be sharing you this concept of Freud's view of human mind. It's not really part of the discussion, but I will just go through it once we'll have the synchronous meeting. Last but not the least is Virgilio Enriquez. Na meron din palang psychology yung Filipino. And yes, it that is why napakahalaga ng role na ginampanan ni Virgilio Enriquez. Because nagkaroon ngayon ng at least konsepto na meron palang psikolohiyang Filipino. Kasi nagre-rely lang tayo masyado sa kung ano yung konteksto na naibigay sa atin ng Eastern and Western na mga philosophies and mga contributions nila. Lalo na sa psychology, so si Virgilio Enriquez, siya yung nagbigay naman sa atin na meron din palang pagkakakilanlan at contribution ang Filipino pagdating sa psych or sa psychology or pagdating sa understanding the self. According to him, the self in the Filipino is the unity of the self and others expressed in the Filipino word kapwa. So, ang bumubuo daw ang pagkakakilanlan ng isang tao sa kanyang sarili ay sa pamamagitan ng kanyang kapwa. Tama o mali? Pwede magkakaiba kayo ng sagot, but based on the contribution of Virgilio Enriquez, that's the concept of self by means of kapwa sa Filipinos. So the concept of self and others, as he proposed the idea that the word kapwa is how every Filipino thinks, behaves, and relates with others. Ng pakikipagkapwa-tao, yung kapwa natin ay salamin ng ating sarili. So, ganun yung konsepto kasi ng mga Filipinos, di ba? And kapwa does not mean only others, but it is actually, hindi lang siya others na ibang tao. But for us, yung term na kapwa, it is other people, but we share our inner self of a person to those people, to other people. And it's part of us, being ourselves, being you. It's part of a self. A self because it's part of a person. It's part of a Filipino. Now, Enriquez points out that when a Filipino sees the word kapwa, it shows the essence of sharing, seeing, and caring the other as oneself. Kasi nga po, sabi na nga natin that kapwa is nasasalamin ang sarili. Dahil doon, naniniwala tayo dun sa konsepto na sa kapwa ay meron tayong inner self, which is yung sarili natin, but also we have yung other self, which is also what we call others. No? Sa pamamagitan ng ibang tao ay nagkakaroon ng mas malalim na kahulugan ang sarili, ang isang sarili. Self, okay. Yung pakikipagkapwa-tao na naririnig natin, for sure na tackle nyo na siya during elementary and during high school, senior high. So, marami kayong mga subjects na related sa pakikipagkapwa-tao. Specific na nga, di ba, before the values education, naging specific na siya sa pakikipagkapwa-tao na subject, I think, for your, I'm not sure if it's elementary or high school, but yun nga, na-specify na natin. Ganun ka-importante ang kapwa, ang pagkikipagkapwa-tao kasi naniniwala tayo na ang konteksto ng kapwa sa Filipino ay sa Filipino lang. Iba ang sharing ng, like for example, yung sa mga Eastern, di ba, yung Hinduism, sa Confucianism, and sa Buddhism, may mga iba silang contribution pa sa pag-iintindi kung ano yung understanding the self. But for us, this SP kung tawagin or Psikolehiyang Pilipino is just one sharing his or herself to others as form of his kapwa is also the form of him knowing himself. Sa papaanong paraan? Paano mo ba malalaman kung anong klase kang tao? Paano mo masasabi na mabait kang tao? Kanino mo ipapakita yung kabaitan? Sa kapwa. Pag gusto mong matawag or part ng personality mo is magiging magalang ka. Paano ka matatawag na magalang? Ipopomo yung magpupo at opo ka sa pader. But again, you need kapwa to show that essence of being magalang. And also, yung perceptions ng other people because of how you behave and act, that concept now develops in how others think of you. And by sharing the feedback of others, by means of, again, you acting and behaving the way you are in front of others, sa pagkakakilala sa ng magulang mo, sa pagkakilala ng friends mo, and minsan iba-iba pa ng pagkakakilala sa kung paano mo pinapakitunguhan ng mga tao sa buhay mo, but still that is the concept of kapwa. That is why for Psikolohing Pilipino kay Mr. Virgilio Enriquez, ang konsepto ng self ng Filipino is the unity of your inner self, but also yung other self mo, which is in the presence of other people. I do hope that you understand what it really meant, and we'll try to give more example on our next synchronous class. So I believe that should be all for now, and I am very excited to hear your answers for our synchronous class kasi definitely it will be something that you can start trying to know yourselves through the philosophical self. The philosophical self is part ng self natin na may history or background siya. Very specific siya na masasabi natin because of the philosophers that we mentioned. The ideologies, and the perspective from the Eastern and Western philosophies. So definitely, it's a good start of how we will be able to understand ourselves. And I believe that's everything. I Please prepare whatever it is na meron kayong questions that you would want us to elaborate, and if may mga sharings kayo based sa narinig ninyo sa discussion natin, so sana i-keep nyo lang siya para masasagot natin siya para sa synchronous class. Okay? I am hoping that you all have a great day. Thank you so much for listening and watching. I do hope you learn from our lecture, and I hope to see you on our synchronous class. Thank you. Have a great day, guys. Bye.